Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with more Christmas cards, more flat shaker cards, and more hot foiling. Because I am obsessed. If you missed my previous video, I did flat shaker cards with hot foiling in more traditional Christmas colors and explained the whole process, etc, etc. I'm pretty much going to explain it here too, but if you missed that video, check it out. As well as my other Christmas card videos, because I'll have the playlist linked at the end of this video, and I'll continue to add to it as I make more Christmas cards for this year's series. So the fun thing with this is I am going to hot foil onto some recycled packaging that stamp sets, envelopes, etc. come in. I've done, and I will link to my flat shaker card playlist because I have a playlist for that as well because I've done several videos so far. And the cool thing with the flat shaker cards is a way to reuse this packaging. So I always save it now because it comes in so handy. It's so easy to use because it's more pliable, etc, etc. But the cool thing is you can foil on it. My assumption is because hot foiling doesn't get too crazy hot. If you've ever used your hot foil machine, you know, like it gets hot, but it doesn't get as hot as like heat embossing, etc. I'm not going to ever attempt heat embossing on this type of packaging. I assume a heat tool will melt it, like just flat out. You know, there's way hotter levels. People have been asking about like laminators, mink machines. I don't know. This isn't something I ever would have thought of. And I wouldn't have even thought of hot foiling on this packaging, but a fabulous person named Karen had emailed me and she had tried it out and it worked perfectly. So I did my previous video. I had to do another one. I'm having so much fun, and there will be more, I'm sure, because it's kind of addictive. And like I've said, I have so much hot foil. I'm pretty close, if not already have like every color of Glimmer hot foil that Spellbinders has released. I've got my machine, tons of hot foil plates, you know, all the fun stuff. So this time I'm using the great big, this is the JOYOUS Christmas hot foil plate from Simon Says Stamp. And I am using it with some teal Glimmer hot foil. And FYI, if you don't have hot foil or just don't want to get into it, there is a wafer die set, like a JOYOUS Christmas wafer die that's the same size as this. There's like the word and the outline together. I will link to that because you could just die cut the word from like some pretty metallic cardstock or glare cardstock or whatever and adhere that to the packaging if you don't want to do the hot foiling. Like you could achieve a similar look. Obviously, you can't really cheat the hot foil look, but you could still make a really pretty card with, you know, similar things. So I will link to that wafer die as well. But of course, I'm doing the hot foiling. So you do it the exact same way you do with cardstock. The only difference is because this packaging is so thin, I have 2 shims of cardstock between my spacer plate and the Spellbinders shim. So you follow the same procedure. You have the hot foil plate on the machine to heat up. You put the hot foil pretty side facing the plate, plastic or your cardstock, all the shims, press the button, let it heat up, run it through your machine when the flashy button goes solid. And that's it. It's so fun. Every time. It's kind of the same idea, like I've said with heat embossing. You know, when you heat emboss and the embossing powder starts to melt and it's just like, ooh, it's so pretty. I get that same feeling when I foil and I peel the foil off, you know, and it's revealed and it's worked and all that stuff. And it's so satisfying. So I did 2 because 99% of the time with this packaging, like I've cut the piece apart so I get more than one piece out of it. So I can do multiple cards, which I also especially love, especially when I'm doing Christmas cards because I always need more of these. So I did this twice with the same teal hot foil, same process, etc. Peeled off that plastic packaging and it works. I think anything hotter would pretty much, because it does kind of, you can see the packaging's a little wrinkled, but at the same time it's a little wrinkled anyway because it's just recycled packaging. But I do think anything hotter would probably melt it, so I'm not willing to risk it because, you know, just no. Anywho, I set those aside And for my background, I am using Simon's Geometric Snowflakes background stamp. And I have some white cardstock here. And I use my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock. And I just have the background stamp face up on my desk. And I'm inking it up with Simon's clear embossing ink. And then I'm going to flip this cardstock over right onto that background and just press it down with my fingers. I could have used a Misty, but with things like this, this works just as well. I've been shown how to do this for years. This is how I used to use background stamps since way back in the day. So stamp that with clear embossing ink. And then I'm coating it with Hero Art's White Satin Pearl embossing powder. So it's going to be subtle, but White Satin Pearl embossing powder, if you don't have any, I highly recommend it. It is just such a pretty embossing powder. It's not glittery or anything like that. It just has that really pretty pearlized sheen to it. And you'll actually see it better a little later in the video because I'm going to heat emboss my sentiments with it. But for this background, I wanted subtle, but just that little something, you know, and it just, love. Especially with a geometric background like this. Like I of course, I was like, ooh, I could watercolor, you know, add a million things. But I wanted to keep it a little simpler because I'm going to be filling this with like all the sequin elements. Speaking of, the sequins I'm using kind of inspired the colors for this card. So I'm using Simon's Midnight Sparkle sequins, and there's these light blue ones in there. So I went through my ink stash and found a light blue ink. This is Wendy Vecchi's Sky Blue ink. And I did the same method, except this is going on the inside of the card base. So I used some Post-it tape to mask off where the score line is so I don't stamp past the fold. And same idea. This time I used some scrap paper to keep the ink from getting on my fingers. I don't mind if I get ink on my fingers, but when I'm working with white cardstock and especially white cardstock card bases, I try not to get the ink on my fingers because it's guaranteed I'm going to smear it. I'm going to get it on the card where it doesn't belong, you know, those sorts of things. So if I can avoid that, I will. So inked up the stamp, pressed the background onto it with the scrap of paper, and then peeled off the Post-it tape, and I've got the inside stamped with just a nice light blue ink that's easy to write over. And then for my like inner sentiment, because I just have to have something on the inside, I'm using the XL Christmas Greetings again. This is just going to be a fave for this Christmas season. And I just have a scrap of white cardstock. This time I am using my Misty because I'm going to ink up and stamp these sentiments more than once because they're such solid letters. So I want to make sure I get everything fully stamped. So I'm going to do this twice. So I ink it up, stamp it twice, flip the cardstock around or rotate it around, and then stamp it again a couple of times. And I'm going to coat it with that White Satin Pearl embossing powder, which with something more solid like this, you can definitely see the, like not the shimmer, just that pearl look to it. And it really is just gorgeous. And you almost could get away with just using it like this, like not adding ink or anything, because it is legible. You can read it, everything. But I still wanted to add a bit of color to make it a little easier to read regardless. So this time I'm using the Wendy Vecchi Garden Patina ink. I would have used like solid color cardstock because I was trying to match that teal metallic. I didn't have any cardstock that was close, like the color I was looking for. So I just used ink. Simple. Why not? So ink blended over that, and of course the embossing powder resists the ink, so now you can read it perfectly fine. And again, you still get that little bit of a pearl reflect to it, which I love. And then I use the coordinating wafer die to die cut those so I can stick them on the inside of my card. So now I'm going to make the shaker element. So these pieces I had originally stamped and made larger so I could trim them down without getting any weird embossing fingerprints, you know, that sort of a thing. And I trimmed these down to just a smidge smaller than A2 size. So yeah, just slightly smaller than that. So I trimmed it down with my guillotine trimmer. Once these are trimmed down, I'm going to line up the packaging with the sentiment. And this was also a nice reason why I was choosing bigger pieces of packaging, because of course I have all sorts of sizes in my stash. But I went with larger, and I'm glad I did because I ended up deciding to kind of rotate and put the sentiment at an angle, which for me is a little bit out of the box. I fight my OCD constantly, you know, wanting to have things on a line, wanting to have things straight, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, put it on a bit of an angle, taped it just into place temporarily with that same Post-it tape. And then I just trimmed off the excess with my great big Tim Holtz scissors. Once that's trimmed off, I can flip this over and start adhering around the perimeter. So I'm using red line tape for this. Like I mentioned in my last video, this stuff is super, super strong. Another good option is score tape. Anytime you're trying to adhere stuff like this, I recommend, I call these like dry tapes versus using like a liquid adhesive. It's just, one, it's faster because you don't have to wait for the liquid adhesive to dry. And two, I do just feel like dry adhesives, aka tapes like this, just work the best for adhering like plastic stuff. So yeah, they're just good to have in your stash, especially if you like to do things like 3D little like boxes and those sorts of little elements. This stuff is the bomb. So I adhere 3 sides with the red line tape, and I use my little Tim Holtz scissors, my little snips, to cut the adhesive, and then I use my cutter bee scissors. That's why you have to have multiples of all the different types of scissors to actually peel off the backing. And then I apply the adhesive to the 4th side, but I'm not sealing it up because I got to fill it with all the bling. So these ones are going to go heavy on the bling because like that was kind of my whole design idea, whatever you want to call it. One, because it's edge to edge and it's kind of almost the focus in a sense. So I put in those Midnight Sparkle sequins, and then I added some turquoise sequins from my stash that I've had, these like Pretty Pink Posh ones that I've had since those first, like since Pretty Pink Posh, I think first started. You know, because that's what she used to release just back in the day, was just solid colors of sequins, like that was the thing. And I still have all of them. So this is getting me to like go through my stash and actually start using things. So anywho, added those, and then I added a bunch of Distress Rock Candy glitter. I have this big old jar of it. This stuff's amazing. This is another thing you should have in your stash, in my opinion. I know some people don't like dry glitter. There's something about the rock candy, and I don't know what magic they do with rock candy glitter, but it is non-staticky, literally. Like if you've ever worked with dry glitter, you know, like it clings to everything. It's staticky. It just is what it is. But there's something with rock candy glitter that it literally isn't. And I don't know why. And it's got a different, it's not as sparkly, you know, as iridescent. So it kind of works for everything. It's really good for snow too, just FYI. It's a nice glitter to have. I really like it. So filled up this shaker with all those things. And then I sat and played with it for a while. Because you gotta. It's fun. That's the whole point of shakers. Like, I love it. So after everything is sealed in, on the back of the card, I put more red line tape around the perimeter and a bit of craft tacky glue just down the middle, just to make sure everything's good and adhered flat to the card base. And then line this up with the card so it covers the full card, hence the edge to edge shaker. Love it. And then I'm going to adhere that sentiment to the inside of the card. And then after I'm done this off camera, I repeated the exact same process for the second card. So once these were done, I'm going to pair them with Simon's white metallic envelopes, which were like a perfect match to the white satin pearl embossing powder. I love when like I grab random things from my stash and they just like go together so perfectly. So I was really happy about that. And then yeah, I sit and I play with the shakers because what, you know, you just gotta. That's the fun of it all. So, yeah. Paired it with those metallic envelopes. Like, aren't those pretty? They're so pretty. I've been hoarding them for quite some time. I need to get some more. I have all their colors of metallic envelopes, of course, but these white ones are just perfect for Christmas cards. So, there's my second so far. I'm sure I'll do more, but I'll intersperse it with other things. It won't be hot foiling all the time. Just, I'm kind of obsessed at the moment. But anyway, as always, there'll be a link below the video to my blog post, supply list, links to all the supplies I used. And then like I'd mentioned earlier, I'll link to the playlists, like my Christmas playlist and my flat shaker playlist. So if you guys have missed anything, you can find that. You can also search my YouTube channel, all that good stuff. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching and subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting. I very much appreciate you all. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.